When Trump's America bombed Iran's nuclear sites, there was one thing that was very clearly communicated. As far as the administration was concerned, this was not declaring war on Iran. It was simply a targeted strike to prevent Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon. A special military operation, you might call it. And there was, in particular, one very clear agreement that the administration put out into the public domain. J.D. Vance.
We don't want to achieve regime change.
Pete Hegseth.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change.
Marco Rubio.
Your expectations with regard to regime change in Iran?
Well, that's certainly not the goal of what we're working on here.
President Trump. Oh, wait. Okay, President Trump. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MAGA! Let's ignore the implication that political correctness has something to do with whether you seek to topple another country's government or not. Various people obviously saw that tweet by Trump and immediately concluded that he loved bombing Iran so much that he's immediately bought into a Netanyahu extended objective scenario, and he's now all in on that. Some MAGA influencers certainly took this conclusion. Alex Jones, for instance, who posted this: President Trump has publicly endorsed regime change in Iran, breaking his promise to the American people and pushing the planet to the edge of a nuclear world war. The similarly, lively Candace Owens said this, and just like that, regime change. We were simply being politically correct before by not using the term. Why are the conspiracy theorists right about everything? Not entirely sure which conspiracy theorists and which predictions she specifically had in mind there, because of course the idea that President Trump might bomb Iran, it's not really a conspiracy as such. But anyway, moving on, the other phenomenon we saw again was other MAGA influencers quickly adapting their previously strongly expressed opinions. Charlie Kirk had previously quote-tweeted Lindsey Graham saying this: "This is insane. Regime change will result in a bloody civil war, killing hundreds of thousands and creating another massive Muslim refugee crisis. Toppling a leader is never as easy as you think. It almost always results in further involvement of civil war and chaos. Resist this." Ah, yes, but after Trump had posted his own positive vibes about the idea of regime change, Kirk mellowed significantly. A bottom-up revolution rises from the will of the people. A top-down regime change is engineered by elites and the intel community. One is organic, the other is orchestrated, forced. President Trump is talking about an organic uprising. Well, if you say so. Most of us have problems knowing what on earth President Trump is talking about most of the time, whatever he's talking about. But then we don't have the privilege of the same concentrated power of wishful thinking as the MAGA faithful. Now, what's really going on here? I think it's simply a reflection of the title I gave yesterday's video. Trump struck against Iran, and now he is praying that that's the end of it. Iran will throw in the towel. America looks strong, emerges triumphant. He remains the heroic leader who applied a decisive blow. To encourage the Iranians to play their part in that scenario, he is threatening them that if they don't, unspecified bad stuff will happen to them. He's already hinted that the US knows where the Ayatollah Khomeini is holed up and that they could take him out at any point. We'll come back to that in a moment. When he announced the strike, he said that if the Iranians now did not come to the negotiating table, and if they kept trying to develop nuclear weapons, then America would hit them again very hard. That already signalled the lie that was being told. The lie was that America had just devastated Iran's nuclear program. Full stop. No doubt about it, 100% destroyed, because we've got big bombs and we know how to use them. Hence it was a one-off strike, not us declaring war, not us dragging the US into a forever war. positively surgical it was. But no actual grown-ups have since been able to show or prove that the assessment of the effectiveness of the single strike is actually true. It turns out that doing damage assessment when you're hitting a target buried deep under a mountain is almost as difficult as actually hitting that target in the first place. The Israelis clearly have their doubts, because the very next day they've been hitting the Fordow site themselves. Doesn't entirely seem like the actions of people taking President Trump's word for it on their glorious and total success. Then you add to that the other inconvenient question: where is the uranium? Iran claimed it was able to move most or all of its 400 kilograms of highly enhanced uranium from the target sites that America hit to a number of smaller secret locations before the bombs were even dropped. A former US official on Iran issues, Richard Nephew, told the Financial Times, "On the basis of what we've seen at this point, we don't know where the material is. We don't have any real confidence that we've got the ability to get it anytime soon. I think you would be foolish," he added, "if you said that the program was delayed by anything more than a few months." Some have suggested that the Israeli/US attacks will now lead to Iran pushing forward the speed of its development of nuclear weapons rather than pulling back. The lesson they will take from the difference in how the West treats Russia as a potential nuclear threat and how they just treated Iran kind of makes the benefits of having such weapons obvious. They might also draw lessons from India, Pakistan and North Korea, even arguably Israel itself, all of which developed covert nuclear weapons programs in the face of scrutiny and supposed restrictions from the outside world, including from the United States. This would risk drawing the US more directly into conflict with it, but there are some advantages their strategists might see as working on their side. They will know very well, for instance, that Trump's own base is deeply split on the idea of him involving the United States in a shooting war with Iran, and that the American public is fed up of forever wars and very aware of candidate Trump's promises not to get into any new ones. The Iranians might feel that if they could make a couple of successful attacks on US bases or other America-related targets in the Middle East, maybe even a terrorist attack on the US mainland, then sentiment could turn against Trump very quickly. Indeed, while shooting this video, the news came through of the first such attacks against US bases in Qatar and Iraq. Whether these are restrained, obligatory responses that are designed to be part of a de-escalation move, or whether they are the start of a genuine pushback, remains to be seen. The reality is that Trump has taken a massive gamble. It's easy to miss, even as various people are piling praise onto him for taking action against Iran that previous presidents all ducked. Now, of course, those previous presidents were facing a fully at-strength Iran, not the degraded one that Israel has produced after 2 years of attacking its proxies and preparing itself for a devastating first strike against Iran itself. But even trenchant Trump critics, like his former National Security Advisor John Bolton, were going onto the media praising his decisive action in this case. But yes, for all that, Trump's big threats and his floating the idea of regime change, they're all a reflection of the fact that he knows how vulnerable he is to Iran now taking actions that will force him to respond in kind, because that's exactly how you get dragged into a war. So he's doing everything he can to talk big, to try to dissuade them from doing that. Now, what about the argument that some have been making that what Trump was really doing was adding his voice to Benjamin Netanyahu's in calling for the good, freedom-loving people of Iran to rise up against their oppressors? If that was what he had meant, you would expect some reference to that context to be made in the tweets that he posted, rather than calling regime change politically correct, which sounds a lot more like him asserting his right to engage upon it if he should so choose. So it sounds to me like an attempt to dissuade them from action. And you could see this as well in Secretary of State Marco Rubio's comments on Sunday that retaliating would be, quotes, the worst mistake they ever made. But that said, the rather hapless, if aggressive, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt almost certainly accidentally gave material for the opposite impression. She said that Trump thinks Iranian should overthrow their government if it refuses to negotiate on its nuclear program. Now, this combined the post-rationalization that Trump was calling for a bottom-up revolution, but paired it with the statement that this should come not if Iran strikes back in retaliation, but if it fails to negotiate. So let's reflect on the supposedly clear but contradictory statements. If Trump had been correct that the US has completely destroyed Iran's nuclear capacity and it was a one-off strike, then they should be able to walk away at this point. Job done. We don't really care what you do now, so long as you don't attack us, of course. But the reality is clearly that it is simply not the case. In spite of Trump's bluster, neither the United States nor Israel feel confident that they have done enough to prevent Iran from sprinting forward to get a nuclear weapon left to their own devices. So what Trump is saying, we've hit you. By so doing, we have become a direct participant. Now, if you don't surrender, at the very least to the degree where you end your nuclear program in total, with us being able to verify that that's the actual fact, then we're going to hit you more. That is not a single strike and done. It is not a special military operation. It is war. Regime change, of course, is the ultimate win in a war. So it's not an accident that Trump talked about it, because he's counting on the war being won without any more American shots being fired, just the threat of such shots. That's what he needs. That's why it's a huge gamble. And just in case you thought this was making him look at least vaguely competent, it's recently come out that his recent posts on his social media platform had become the biggest obstacle to operational security. But wait, you might say, I thought that was Pete Hegseth's job. Well, when Trump posted that the US and Israel had complete control of the skies over Iran and boasted that he could order a strike on Iran's supreme leader at any time, this was divulging information that removed some important elements of surprise. And that, more than anything, led to the ruse where Trump announced that he was delaying action for 2 weeks, while in truth the plan was to move according to the original timetable. Now, at least Pete Hegseth only posted such details in a Signal chat, albeit ones that had a journalist accidentally added to it, plus his wife and brother. Posting such things in public, yet another step beyond, and another reason why the Iranians might be tempted to try their luck. China actually jumped onto this aspect in their condemnation of the US action, because Trump had, in announcing the delay, encouraged Iran to think the extra time would be the focus for diplomatic activity. China said the US had hurt its diplomatic standing by attacking while it was engaged in talks with Tehran. China is working with Russia and Pakistan to draft a United Nations resolution calling for a ceasefire. That's quite an ironic twist, actually, because just a day before Trump launched the attack, Pakistan was the country that had just nominated him for something he has long coveted, a Nobel Peace Prize. Awkward. All of this adds colour and noise to the NATO summit taking place tomorrow, assuming that Trump even shows up, or hangs around for long if he does. The fact should be plain to all those attending, as it was to those at the G7 summit last week, that right now Trump is a lone actor dominating the world security stage for sure, and with zero interest in the advice, moderation or judgment of any of the other countries formerly known as allies. If he attends, he will be there to bully and to push others to do more, to spend more on defence, to be more like him, all while actually being the president who once promised peace and has nevertheless just started something that he may no longer be able to control.